I'm going to inject the book management on the next page with this. I'm not exactly sure how we came up with that, but we're going to edit these books before they go out again. The comic books that some people get, I remember years ago there was at least some decent comic books, and I haven't been around comic books in years, so I don't know what they are today, but I do know that you can get carried away with that and you can get addicted to it. And we are obligated, responsible, duty-bound to make sure that we are managing our life effectively. If you don't manage that television sitting in your house or televisions, they're going to manage you. If you don't have some rules and regulations concerning that television, it's going to capture you. Well, television is a thing that you need to be cautious with, particularly if you have cable and satellite dishes and so forth. You can get a lot of garbage piped into your home unwanted. But if it keeps coming in, you might want it. If you don't decide that you're going to put your spiritual life first, and you manage that spiritual part of your life, the secular is going to take over. Because as you sit there and watch these Christian movies, you can get caught with Christian movies too. They're suggestive and everything else. But you see, they make it seem so innocent. It's the same thing with these books that has to do with cucumber speaking to you and cabbage and so on talking. And we can't seem to be in this generation, human beings can hardly speak to children because they can't understand. You have to have either a rabbit or a long-nosed squirrel talking to them or some idiot of a goose. Why is it that children have to be given that garbage in order, and puppet shows at church? Why? Really? Why? Are we that foreign to spiritual things that little child cannot get it? It's cute. I never seen any of them cute. They don't, I was at a place one time and a fellow had a call in his life to have puppet shows. I'm supposed to preach after he got done with the puppet show. And you know what's wondered me? Can't the children understand some besides some? I love Jesus. I tell you what, a goose was never ordained of God to lead you to Jesus Christ. Neither was some kind of a stupid cat, some image of a cat or a baboon or whatever. Folks, listen, we got to get back to reality. Television has got us all messed up. And it's dominating churches today. How are you and your family affected by watching these? There's a movie years ago, way back yonder, that was a clean one. It was a good movie. It was a nice movie. Had nothing in it suggestive that I could ever remember. I watched a new version of that to see what happens in the generation. You know, I couldn't watch it. It was so downright wicked and had so many cuss words in it, I threw the thing in the trash can. I said, this is not what we used to talk about. It's not, it may be the same title, but it's totally, completely two different things. And I said, I'm not watching that. I'm not polluting my mind with all that ungodly stuff. And of course, it was sex-oriented now. You know, the psalmist said, I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the works of them that turn aside. it shall not cleave to me. Psalms 110 and verse 3. I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the works of them that turn aside. I'm not going to do it. Do you know what? We're going to have to make some decisions. We're going to have to manage. I am not about to be a person that tells you can't have a television. I'm not about to say that. We don't have one. But I'm going to tell you something. I have no right to do that. You're the one that has to manage that. But if you don't manage it, it's going to manage you. Because if you don't watch how things are, one magazine had in something about a spiritual thing, and the very next thing it was some corruption. I'm going to slip over to this book and magazine section there on 21. We need to be selective of books and magazine management. What used to be decent is no longer decent in many books and magazines. Foul language and indecent pictures and lust suggestion and advertisements, so on, have changed the American society. Really, advertisements has changed. If you want to go down the road, they have to have a billboard with some trash on it in order to get your attention. You know why? Because America is so perverted. We don't have any respect in the hospitals, doctors' offices, or nowhere. There's no respect, no decency anywhere. Even churches don't have much decency in them. Women run around hardly any clothes on in churches. And say, aren't you being critical? Whatever you want to call it. Whatever you want to call it, I don't care. But I'm saying we're heading down the road very quickly to destruction. I tell you, while you're reading that magazine, can you keep a pure, clean mind? When you go to work, can you keep a pure, clean mind in the workplace? You all have heard me say this before, but Esther and I was kind of pushed into a holiday season that her uncle wanted us to come and help him in the work line in killing poetry and not poetry, poultry. And there's a woman in there. I mean, that woman had the foulest mouth. And I took it for a little while. And after a while, I mean, I challenged her. I said, look, I'm not going to have you working near me with that mouth of yours. And she said, oh, I know how far to carry things. I don't mean anything bad. I said, sure you mean something bad. The Bible says out of the mouth, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. That's what's in your heart. Oh, I tell you, she never spoke another evil word while I was there. Somebody had to challenge her. I said, I'm not working here with you. Either you're going or I'm going. And the boss man wasn't a whole lot better till I said that, and I'll tell you, the place quieted down. I said, I'm not having my wife working here in that junk either. You know, folks, you sound like you're critical. Whatever you want to call it, don't matter. We're not having it. It's these magazines that, I'll tell you, when your wife has to go along and cut a bunch of pages out of the paper before you read it, there's something wrong with that magazine. And some of those magazines I got years ago, I mean way back 50 years ago, 60 years ago, I got them magazines. And they weren't that way. They didn't have that junk in them back in them days. They was oriented for family. They still are. What is called family stuff today is wicked. Listen, folks, I'm pouring my heart out to you. I came from a generation that wasn't perverted like this and is, although it was bad. You remember back in the book of Acts, they had a harvest one day, and they brought all their books and magazines and the curious arts, and had a burning. And they had a revival. They burned the books up. And they counted the price of them and found it 50,000 pieces of silver. I don't know how much money that is, but it was apparently enough to make a difference. I tell you, when people become billionaires by selling pornography equipment, something's wrong with America. Pornography magazines is really a going thing. And one preacher said he has to have a pornography magazines, or pornography, he said videos, so that he can have a good relationship with his wife. I said, you're lying. You're feeding your lust. I tell you, if you men stop lusting after your wife and start loving her, it's going to make a lot of difference. You say, and you're getting kind of rough. I don't care if it is rough. Folks, listen, I only got one chance at this. I may not have a chance to speak about this anymore. These men that's delivering babies, they got a filthy mind or they wouldn't be doing it. The Lord told me it's impossible for a man to have that kind of a job without either corrupting his mind. He would defend his, if he had a pure mind, he'd defend himself. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't be involved tonight. But we've done it so many times now, it's just normal. You can't even get a health magazine anymore without some pollution in it. Now let me slip up to the internet at the top of the page. What influence does internet have on you? How much time do you spend on the internet? I don't know how many people's asked me, do you think I ought to be having internet? I said, I'm not answering that question. You have to decide that, not me. Internet is one of the best things that we could have had. But it's like television, it's messy. It's got junk on it now. The Lord said to me one day, He said, never read what somebody has to say about another person, because it's not hardly even 1% chance it's going to be right. Wow. They are tenting it to themselves. Somebody's unloading their opinion. Yeah. I want to know, does it internet can be good or a bad effect? Does it have a good effect on you, or are you wasting your time doing it? There are some things I could use with internet, but I have to manage that thing. We have gone into the library already and used the internet because I needed to find something out, and we go in there to get it done. Well, what we did was we have a purpose to go. We had a purpose. We didn't spend much time there. We got the job done, went home. But you can spend a lot of time there digging around. And internet, such as buying airplane tickets and so forth, would be a great help. And I'm not saying don't say that I said it, because I didn't. I didn't say don't have internet. I'm saying manage the thing, or it'll manage you. And if you don't have one, I'm not recommending you get one. The Lord told me not to get any. Unless He tells me something different, at least at that point He said not to. If He tells me something different, I'm going to have to make sure that I understand what it's all about. Internet can be a devilish thing, but it can be a good thing. Music management. Music can have a great effect upon people. What influence? What do you like to listen to in the music realm? What motivates you to listen? And is it something secular that's getting your attention, or is it spiritual? Or I want to ask you another question. Why is it that today hymns have almost vanished from churches? Only the old Orthodox, when they say, have them. Praise music's okay. Praise music is okay. But what's wrong with getting rid of the hymns? Is that because what happens a lot of times is somebody wants to write a praise song, and they want you to sing their praise song. Yeah. And if it's good, that's okay. But if it's not good, it isn't. If you are just doing this because it motivates you, what about the rest of the congregation? I tell you, there's some songs that will never lose their value. They'll never lose their value. They're going to have a value. They're going to be of value to them, because somebody put their heart out in this thing. Music could be one of the most beneficial things we can have or it can be the most detrimental. When you go into those nursing homes, most of those people are elderly. So that means back they were lived in the hymn days. And so when you sing hymns to them, they identify with it, don't they? It thrills them. They rejoice in that. And I'm disappointed that most of our churches have just about thrown hymns completely out the window. Furthermore, they're too dry, I reckon, because they slow you down. You know? So we have to have something else. You could ask this question: how is this music affecting me? What influence does this music have on me? You know, if you're going to be listening to music that's pity party stuff, that's the kind of music that sells. Generally speaking, it's pity party stuff. Oh, poor old me. If you can get people crying, but at the same time, that's even changing. What used to be pity party songs now is they don't even want that. They want something really offbeat and everything else. What's this music doing to my family? Whether it's radio, television, or whether it's records, CDs, or videos, or whatever, what's happening? I was so disappointed one day. I got a DVD of a singing group that I knew years ago. And that thing was so defiled that I said, I can't have that thing around here. It's filthy. What they used to be clean is not clean anymore. What's happened, folks? You know what? Somebody didn't manage their churches right. They didn't manage the nation right. They didn't manage schools right. They didn't manage something right. It's all in management. So you and I are going to have to decide we're going to manage things different. We're going to manage the music that we're going to use in our house. And we're going to ask several questions. What influence does this music have on me? What influence does this music have on someone else? What about it? Let the word of God dwell in you richly with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your heart to the Lord. We need songs. That's a part of life. See, a song leader should not just select a song. He ought to come to church with a plan in mind. What direction would the Lord lead me? Now, you can get messed up with that too. You could say, Lord, what for songs should we sing today? And they're all the songs you want to sing. See, the Lord doesn't go by your lips. He goes by your heart. He interprets your heart. He does not interpret your lips. You see, when you are asking the Lord, now, Lord, I don't want to preach anything except what you want me to preach, and go tell exactly the way you want it to. The heart is not with it. If you can remember that God doesn't interpret your lips, He interprets your heart. And so what you do, if you're going to be a song manager at church, you have to decide, are these the songs that we need for today? Maybe they was okay last week, but they may not be this week. When we used to have healing meetings, I knew what songs was going to need. I knew exactly what was needed for those song meetings. I knew what was needed. So I went accordingly. And the Spirit of the Lord came in without exception, always. But they had to be managed. See, managing your songs, the songs you're singing. I may surprise you saying this, but I am not even saying you can't have secular music, but it ought to be decent. What used to be a good love song is no longer a love song anymore. I remember there's one, I guess it's a love song, that they still sing today that was sung when I was a boy, way back yonder, when I was a young boy. And that song, I met a girl out in the hills who gave a lonely heart a thrill. Y'all know that song? Don't know that song? Man, I thought everybody knew that song. That song that you can't, that song is right on the whole way through. He says that after he married this woman, he's still in love with her all these years. That's a pretty good love song to me. After all these years, he's still in love with his wife. That fly's a cruising for a bruising. Fly management, the brother said. Now let's go to page 22. Lawn and garden management. What is important in lawn and garden management? I'll tell you, folks, here is where you really have to manage. And that's where I have to manage. I'm telling you, I'd plant. I don't know where the stopping place is on a garden. I like to plant everything. I like to get it going. And I don't have time anymore. But you know what? Teaching your children to work in that garden and enjoy it. I didn't enjoy working in the garden because I don't think my parents knew how to manage us on that situation. Listen, at my home, we planted potatoes. There was 15, 16, 17 of us, at least 16 of us eating at the table all the time. And we planted potatoes. And we'd get on that old, I was usually the one that rode the horse, and we'd plow the potatoes out. And then after we get done, then we got to go down and pick them up, and stupid over picking them things up. We'd pick up 50 bagfuls of potatoes. But I liked potatoes, but I didn't like the work. Nobody taught me the value of going out there and enjoying that work. This is my food. The psalmist said, go to the ant thou sluggard and consider her ways. You know what? It would be good if you had your children understanding that this should be fun. Even they say weed in the garden. That's the problem now. Our gardens are weeded. We need to de-weed the gardens. And that's a hard job. But you know what? If you get trained to know that this is value, I love gardening. Gardening is a part of my life. That's just the way I am. You better. My heart even beats faster when you say garden, because I like the results of a garden. You get them tomatoes right off the stalk. Gather them cucumbers right off the stalk, and those beans and peas and onions and garlic and the whole match. Just pretty good. But you know what? If you train your children that, look, this is what we're putting up for food, and get them to enjoy it. Well, they say, well, are you putting this yard that I have to mow up to food? No, it's beautifying a place. Let's keep it clean. Let's keep it neat. At our property in Georgia, they gave us a discount on insurance because our properties was clean. Gave us a discount. I never heard of such a thing, but they did. They came out and told me they're giving us a discount because the property's clean. How much shrubbery and mulch and stuff do you buy? See, today we've got a mulch-happy society, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there's people spending more money on that than they can afford. Yeah, that's what makes it kind of bad. They're spending more money than they can afford. There's some things you plant that's going to give a yield back. You want to keep your property looking good and so forth, but you need to manage that. How often do you mow your lawn? If you don't manage it, folks, you're not going to have the same thing as you do when you manage it. You have to bear in mind what your pocketbook can handle. And also how much food you can give. And I always did want to do this, raise more than we need so we can give a little bit away. Because that's really a part of it. But now, you see, we're getting older, and to go harvest all this stuff is not the same as it used to be. We have to all plan. You have to learn to decide what to do with all that. This is the part of life, folks. This is management. How much do you can? How much do you lay away? How much do you freeze? How much do you do? Manage the thing. How much are we going to put away here? I once knew a man which came over here from another country, and he go plant corn. And he went out and planted corn that close together, about an inch apart. And the old corn didn't do. And he can't understand why it don't have any ears on it. There's a reason it don't have ears on it. It's a good reason. You don't plant corn that close together. You don't sow corn, you plant corn. You know. And now, this is not cornology. I'm not giving you a lesson on corn raising. But if you're going to manage that garden right, there's certain nutritions need to go in that soil in order to produce. You just don't go out and just buy something and throw it on the soil. You have to know enough about that soil to know what it needs, what you use, how do you take care of a situation. You run into a problem, what's lacking, and all that stuff is a part of it. You know, the old catchy phrase years ago used to be, sow your wild oats and then pray for crop failure. How would you like to pray for crop failure in your garden? See, there's bugs and stuff that want to help you eat your stuff. And you have to know how to manage it. Remember the psalmist said he went past Proverbs said it went past the place and the thing was all broken down. The walls broken down, stuff. Somebody's not taking care of the place. Folks, your property can decay in a hurry if you don't keep those boards back on. If the board comes off, you need to get it back. You have to get some stuff done. It's an upkeep. Keep that thing going. Keep it nice. That's all part of management. You may choose to do nothing, but there's never a thing where there's nothing to do. Now, you may choose to do nothing, but there's never a time there's nothing to do. You can do something. And if you keep managing, here's the thing. What are you going to do with 5 children? What are you going to do with 5 children? You got to give them something to do. And those children need to work. What are you going to do with them? Manage them. A good manager can find a job. And not everybody that thinks you're a good manager is. But the Bible says if a man provide not for his own, especially those of his household, he has denied the faith that is worse than an infidel. You know, here's the thing, folks. Having somebody feed you and your family is not biblical. You feed. You help to feed the poor. Not you join the poor. Because a lot of poor people are not poor because they don't have money and jobs. It's because they don't manage their life. Now let's look at emergency management a little bit. The wise man will repair. There can always be earthquakes, wars, food and water shortage, storms, hail, and many other disasters. I want to mention something to you about this. Do you know, I thought I had something here I wanted to add on to that. You don't know what could happen. There can be an earthquake happen just this quick. All of a sudden, your food and water's cut off. It can be a storm come in and tear up things. And a tornado could come up this afternoon and rip your house down. But are you prepared for anything? Do you have anything prepared in case? Of course, it could all be buried anyway, but nevertheless, there comes a time that you need to manage. To get some stuff in that. I remember the days, how many of y'all remember the days when they used to can? It wasn't because they was afraid that there wasn't going to have anything to eat. It was a good idea. We grew potatoes and we canned things to last all winter. We had to do it a certain way. You stored your potatoes in a certain way so they lasted. You stored things away in a certain way so they lasted. And so you and I, whether we're living in a food-to-mouth, store-to-mouth business, that's all right as long as everything's going fine, but you ought to have something in hand in case a snowstorm comes out. You watch them say a snowstorm come up, and you go to the grocery store and see what happens. See, there's no preparation for much of anything. And we need to have stuff there that we can back up on in case. And you need to have some emergency things stored up. You need to have some flashlights. You don't know what's going to happen. You're not fear. You don't do this out of fear. You do it because it's good management. It's good management to have flashlights and matches and even something packed up maybe in case of an earthquake or something. You may have to walk away from here to go somewhere. Anyway, let's not get critical of other people and say, well, they don't have any faith is the reason they're storing up. You talk about that when you're hungry and somebody's got something to eat. Now, let's talk about sick bed management. Well, I never go get sick because I'm a man of faith. I'm a woman of faith. I'm a boy or girl of faith. I never get sick. I never would get sick. I've been in this world for a long time. Don't get sick. You don't know if you will or not. Just don't get too spouty because you maybe haven't been under the test. You know, I knew a fellow that's never going to be sick. He had faith enough that he wouldn't be like Daniel Rhodes. He got faith enough he don't ever get sick. Mention my name. But he's the one that had a problem next. Then he got mad at God or lost his relationship with the Lord because it didn't turn out the way he thought it was going to. That's not faith. That's ignorance. But that sick bed thing, I'm not talking about buying a bunch of sick cards, a bed for get well cards and so forth. But there may be a time you're sick, and you may be in bed. There may be some reasons for it. But whether it is or not, that's not the point. You may have to struggle to come through that thing. And a lot of people give up. They're tired. They're tired of fighting. I think it's all right to send cards. I know some people that's in the faith movement think you ought never send anybody a card. I don't know what's wrong with it. The thing of it is we're not pity partying things. We're trying to just cheer you up. I'm standing behind you. And if you've never been on a sick bed, don't criticize someone else. You don't know what they're going through. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth. I humbled my soul with fasting, and my prayers returned to mine own bosom. Here Psalms 35:13 says that this man took care of the sick. They weren't taking care of him. They criticized. You know, Job's critics are still alive. Their ancestors are. You know, they criticize you for being sick. Well, if you was serving the Lord right, you wouldn't be sick. And then, of course, you got all the other things. I tell you, folks, take it easy about how you manage sickness. If you're on a sick bed, you ask the Lord about what may be causing the problem or something like this and start using Bible verses. But at the same time, don't judge the other person on a sick bed. You don't know. You might be there next. I've been on the sick bed many a time, and I always came off the sick bed every time. And you're just not going to find me criticizing people with that. Well, if they had faith, they wouldn't be sick. Yeah, if you had the same thing they had, I wonder how you'd be doing. You may not know. But I tell you, you're going to have to manage that thing. If you're on a sick bed, manage to get off of there. Manage your life to teach something. Furthermore, not everybody's the same. There's some people have a weak body. They're easier to get sick. Now let's talk about tragedy management. You may have never faced a tragedy, but if you did, things can change. It can change a lot of things in a hurry. Tragedy management. There are people who have just had terrible tragedies. Let me give you an illustration. A fellow left his precious family behind, and he went down to Texas to preach. And he's down there preaching. And he got a telephone call. Pastor, we're sorry to tell you, but your house caught on fire and your family's all burned up. Wife and children. That fellow sat down and he said, I'll never preach again in my life. Never preach again. It's more than he could take. He couldn't understand why the Lord would allow that to happen. The man's out trying to preach, and now the Lord let this happen. He's struggling with not getting mad at God. They tried to comfort him, and the more they tried to comfort him, the worse it got. You don't understand. He was totally unprepared for this. You know, the man went home. They had the funeral. And everything's done away with. And he said, you know, I'm making my life miserable for myself. I am really making the tragedy hit me. I'm taking it personal. And I need to put all this in the hands of Almighty God. And I want to make sure that I have the story correct, because the preacher that talked to me about it knew the man personally. But if I have the story correct, which I think I do, this man sat down and he wrote this song. He keeps me singing. That's a song that's been around for a long time. This preacher said, I know the man personally. He was going to give up. But he said, no, I can't give up. I can't give up. Now, if I don't have that story together perfectly, at least you got the senses of the thing. He said, I'm not giving up. I'm going back to preaching. I am not going to hold God responsible or nobody else. He got back on the field. And he did his job because he learned how to manage tragedy. And you and I may not understand. And I think it's good to pray that we don't have tragedy. I think it's a good thing to pray about that. Say, Lord, deliver us from tragedy. Deliver us from those things. After all, didn't He promise us long life? He really did. David was greatly distressed because the people's talking about stoning him. He goes out to fight a battle and then comes back and somebody had burned a city up. Took their wives off and went off with it. And every man was grieving for his sons and his daughters. But David encouraged himself in God, in the Lord his God. See, it says the Lord his God. He encouraged himself, finally he begins to decide tragedy is not the bawling. That's not going to get my family back. Crying is not going to get my family back. I have to manage David. So now he calls for management. Okay, David, let's see what we're going to do. So David calls upon the name of the Lord, and he got the answer, got his family back. Everybody's happy now. If he'd have went home whining and crying, he would have never known he got his family back. He would have never known it. But he sought the Lord, and he made sure that he didn't take that personal. Well, it's my fault. Suppose it is your fault that tragedy happened. See, that's the reason when we had our affiliated meetings, we kept saying, please keep your children out here. Esther's brother ran over somebody, killed it. That's a terrible thing, folks. I think it was one of his grandchildren he ran over. You run over one of your grandchildren, what do you think that'd be like? I mean, folks, listen, tragedies out there, and you and I are going to have to manage. Well, they shouldn't have let, yeah, I know. Esther's sister had a little boy that he'd get to wandering around, and they forgot to shut the gate or something. He gets down the pond, he drowns. Well, you could have said, well, you ought to. Yeah, but folks, that's not the point now. The tragedy is there. Somebody needs to manage that situation. And you need to manage yourself when you decide what you're going to say about it. No matter who's responsible, listen, folks, until you and I stop making mistakes, we'll never be able to tell everybody else what to do. You know, one time, Esther gave me a telephone bill, electric bill, and some other bill to pay. I came into the office there, Dandy Printing, and threw it up in the rack and was going to take it to the post office. And somehow or the other, I forgot about it. Completely forgot about it. Here one time, we got a notice that they're going to cut our current off, they're going to cut our telephone off, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And I said, what in the world going on? We checked in our checkbook. Yeah, we wrote out a check on a certain date. And I said, Esther, I think I know where them's at. I said, I think I mailed them in the thing your Daily Printing, not in the mailbox. I went and looked, and there they were. They were there. I hadn't mailed them. So, now that's not tragedy. What I'm trying to tell you, make mistakes. I went in to the telephone man, and the funny part of it was, just a day before this happened, there was a half-a-page advertisement on the newspaper that said, if you have a telephone bill or your electric bill or something that is that you feel is they're getting ready to cut you off, you can come and talk to me about it. I walked in the door at his office, and he was standing right there. And I said, they said it's going to cost me so much to get my telephone back. And the fellow said, what's your name? He pulled me up, and he said, you know what? He said, I'm the one that's over all this telephone company. He said, when my people stop making mistakes, then I'll charge you, but they don't stop making mistakes, so I'm not going to charge you. He said, here, take this up to the office. I walked up there with an excuse, with a forgiveness, or what do you call it, a pardon. They didn't cut me off. See, what I'm saying is, if you even make a mistake, let the Lord work it out for you. Let the Lord work this thing out. You may have lost a child or something because of carelessness, but you cannot sit there and keep pondering on that thing. Learn your lessons and learn them well. How do you manage sudden death? When my mother died, my dad said, I just will die too. If mother's not here, it's no use me living. And I think I understood him. And I looked at my dad, and he's there grieving. And I said, Pap? He said, yes. He sparked up. I said, Pap? I said, don't you dare die. I said, I'm your son. You can't die till you're 80 years old. You hear me? My dad was just getting just a slight bit senile. And he said, well, then okay, I better go back and take my vitamins. He lived to be 82. He was going to die. But a son stepped in the way. See, folks, we sometimes have to help to get you over your tragedy mess. Listen, I don't want tragedies. And I don't want you having any reason. I'm trying to tell you now. Let's prepare now that it doesn't happen. We was just talking the other day about This car going into IGA over there at Bridgewater, and nobody got hurt, did he? Nobody got hurt, did he? And you know, I tell you what, if anybody was there to see what happened, and nobody got hurt. And I tell you what, when things like that happen, you better rejoice in the Lord and praise Him, because nothing bad happened. Because sometimes we could have got ourselves in trouble. Now let's say that when a person's grieving, you may have to help them over their grief. We can't stay there and grieve all of our life. There's a woman told me, I'm going to be crying over my mama's grave for the rest of my life. I said, well, you're wasting your time. Your mom's not going to want you at her grave bawling over her. She's gone. Yeah, but I love my mama. There's more than that. Folks, listen, I lost my mama too. But my mama's not at the grave. She don't live in that grave. But how do you manage it? Can you actually, would you blame God? Manage now. If some tragedy happened, would you blame God? How would you respond? You need to manage that thing now. How would you handle something? Let's see discouragement management. All right, now in discouragement, how would you manage a moment of discouragement? Have you already planned that there's going to be days of discouragement, days when you're going to get discouraged? What are you going to do? Just flat? Are you just going to give up? Or what are you going to do? You can plan now how you're going to handle that disappointment, how you're going to handle that discouragement. I tell you, people have tried, starting all these churches and stuff, people's tried everything to destroy me. I'm not sitting around meditating upon that. They tell you you're a cult, and you're in a cult, and all that kind of stuff. That's not changing anything for me. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper wheresoever thou goest. You know, folks, if you can manage discouragement, you can prosper. If you can't manage discouragement, you can fail. Because generally speaking, a discouraged person will operate accordingly. Let's suppose that you walked into a home where there's flowers and well kept and a nice clean home and everything in order. Do you think that would tell you anything? That person's probably a cheerful person. Discouragement management. God told Joshua, you have to be very courageous. If you don't, you're going to fail. Some of you parents are losing courage when it comes to raising your family. They're getting older and you don't see much effect. I'll tell you what, I went for years and wept a lot because I didn't see the people doing what I wanted them to do. And when I sat right here and looked out across that congregation of all those people, that sea of people out there, there wasn't one of those people came in under this thing without their choice. We didn't push them into nothing. And I said, inside of me, there is the vision. These people are with me at last. It took years to do it, but now I have a group of people that's with me. And I said, there it is. Now let it thy servant depart in peace. I leave this world, I want to make sure that everybody's in the place they ought to be. And I seen that. I said, we've never had this much unity that I can ever remember. And that just brings courage to me. But I had to keep encouraging myself. Come on, let's not worry about what they're doing. Let's keep going. Now, don't blow it now. You don't behave yourself. Now, let's talk about this. This is a hard word for me to pronounce. En-so-me-ame-I. In other words, when you can't sleep. How do you say that? Insomnia. That's not something you eat? I thought they eat something sounds like salami or something. Well, anyway, if you can't sleep, you know, you can get to the place in life where you can't sleep. Did you ever have those experiences? You know what? You can manage that and start managing it. What are you going to do about it? Well, first of all, check what you're doing before you go to bed. If you're drinking a lot of caffeine and tea and a heap of other things and soft drinks, there may be a reason that you can't sleep. And another thing is start asking the Lord to help you give His beloved sleep. Here it says in Psalms 127:2, it is vain to rise up early and to sit up late to eat the bread of sorrow, for He giveth His beloved sleep. That's a promise to you. So if you can't sleep, start getting that into your spirit and start talking. Now, if there's something wrong with you physically, then you may have to be prayed for to be healed. But I think a lot of people's sleeping problems is they're drinking too much stuff that keeps you awake. Does that make any sense? I know they used to talk about counting sheep, but I never could find a sheep. So I don't know where you count when you don't see them. But anyway, so you have to manage that sleep management. I'll tell you why. If you don't, you're going to have to someday get a hold of that thing because you're going to have to go to work or you're going to have to do something. It's not going to be appropriate for you to sleep at the wrong place. You know, it's a strange thing to me. People that have trouble sleeping in bed don't have a bit of trouble sleeping in church. And you ever figure that out? Now, relationship and friendship management. Oh, I tell you what, this is a long one. Could be real long. This could be a sermon of itself. But I tell you, a man that has friends must show himself friendly. And there is a friend to stick it closer than a brother. If you're going to have friends, you're going to have to show yourself friendly. You say, well, I'm timid. No, that don't count. But I'm shy. That still don't count. Do you know I'm an extreme shy person? Really, I am. I'm terrible shy. I have to fight that all the time. I struggle with shyness and so on. I always have. You get me around a bunch of strangers, I have to overcome that. I have to manage that. I've got to manage it. I've got to manage who I'm going to be a friend with. I've got to manage that. Friends draw friends. There's people who say, well, nobody pays any attention to me. They don't invite me and they don't do this. And that's because you haven't made yourself available. See, there's a division in a lot of people. It's some people that are on the poor side. They don't have good jobs. They don't manage right. And people don't necessarily want to be around somebody that's going to drag them down all the time and maybe have a mouth that's not very sanctified. And negative talk all the time don't make friends. I watch the conversations in some places. And, you know, you get around our people and listen to conversation. Just listen to conversation. You go around another church group and listen to conversation. It goes something like this. What kind of medicine are you taking? Who's your doctor? Do you take blood pressure medicine? And, you know, isn't that some awful way to talk? I'd rather talk about something else than that. But that's friendship. You have to show yourself to be a friend. Get out there and be a friend. Join in with somebody. All right, let's say, all right, somebody's going to go out to eat. Well, you can't hardly afford it, but you decide this time you're going to go and say, where are you all going? I'd like to join with you. Instead of just sitting there. I've had more people over the years I've ever seen in my life to come and go to a restaurant with me and make me pay the bill. Don't say a word about paying nothing. Just come with me. I've had preachers do me that way. Don't say nothing. Just go along to a restaurant and sit down and eat and get up and walk out the door and make me pay the bill. That don't happen in our circles anymore. You know why? Because preacher managed that. I'm not going to tell you who the preacher was. Don't hitchhike on me without me knowing about it. I'll take you out maybe, but you don't hitchhike on me. Do not deceive, evil communication, corrupt good manners. And I tell you, you're going to get around those people that's got all that mouthful of dirty jokes and whining and gossip and slander and tale-bearing and stuff. You don't want those kind of friends. We got enough of that kind of stuff without getting those kind of friends. There's some people that I just know that if I'm going to be around them, I will hear negative stuff. I know I will. It's going to be negative. Somebody crossed their path. Somebody did this. Somebody did that. It'll always happen that way because they manage that way. How many minutes do I have, did you say? Okay. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. Isn't that okay? In other words, if they're going to try to entice you to do wrong, you say, no, I'm not having friends like that. You think another thing that kills friendship is if you're a person that's got a spiritual mind and you get around those hot rod boys and somebody's on and all that kind of stuff and all these weird toys and stuff, you don't want your children around that. Then you can't understand why nobody likes them. Nobody pays any attention. I tell you what, I'm not a cowboy, and I'm not a hot rodder. And if you want around me, I'm not a motorcycle gang. You know, I like friendship. But there are some people you can't be much friend to. They're carnal.